Hello, and welcome to LangTime Chat, episode 54, where I almost forgot to actually start talking there for a second. Nothing happens till we talk.
Really?
Yeah, like it's just dead air.
Oh, but it still records. It records it.
Records the dead air for our
Yes, it does.
listeners
Yeah.
who are very excited to hear. And actually, that's not a lie. People who are following along are very excited to hear this month's podcast because this episode is a continuation of what we had done last month. So our July episode, which was episode 53. And in that episode, we set out a challenge. And it was a challenge that David and I both did, but we opened it up to patrons as well. And so this is Conlanging with Pre-Existing Material, Part 2. Little overview, just to give you a reminder, or to give you an overview if you hadn't heard yet what the challenge was. I created a term for a type of conlang that is called a FrameLang. I heard that at least one person who listened to last month's episode thought I was saying brain lang the entire time. So, I want to make sure that I say frame lang, like you frame something, you frame a house, you put structure to something. David's not agreeing.
That seems doubtful to me. I mean, it's a stop instead of a fricative, voiced instead of voiceless.
But but our
Weak
ears,
fricative at that.
our ears do things. And it was a term I made up, which means it was a term that, as a listener, you're just trying to put sense to. And if you didn't see it in writing, I totally get it. But anyway, I created this term to refer to languages that are not only built from pre-existing material, but are built from material that wasn't necessarily intended to be a full language in the first place. Material that may or may not be different degrees of gibberish, where it's, for instance, an author just put together what they say, oh, this is a sentence in this language, here you go. It's also like what Mark Ogrant had to do in when he started work on Klingon for Star Trek, because there had been a previous instantiation. I think it was a previous movie, not the show, but a movie where people had spoken in Klingon, specifically like a sentence that had been spoken in Klingon and given subtitles.
It was the opening of Star Trek 1, and Mark Okrand came on. Well, he did a little bit for Star Trek 2, I think, for Vulcan, but then Klingon was Star Trek 3. Yeah, and they were all the movies, yes.
And so he had to work with that material to take what basically, I think, just the actor sort of put out some syllables into the world, and then these subtitles were put down there, and suddenly that became the first sentence of Klingon. And so I call this a FrameLang because you have material you have to work with as you start building the language, and then from there it turns into, its own language. And so this challenge that I set out, anyone who did the challenge had the same data sample, and it was a small data sample that I had just pulled at random from the book Sushi for Beginners by Marian Keyes. And so everything was actually English. Like the full data sample was English, but like anyone who did the challenge had to treat it like it was not English, like it was sort of a collection of phrases or clauses that was in a sort of gibberish language. And so anyway, you had to use, if you did the challenge, you needed to use the data sample to create a language sketch. It could have been minimal. So at minimum, really what I needed from participants was an IPA transcription for the data, just to see how are you treating this is obviously an English spelling. So how are you interpreting what the sounds actually should be? And built on that, just descriptions of sound system, just to make sure I'm reading the notes properly of the transcriptions. And then a basic grammar sketch of just saying, I think this is like head final or head initial, or, here's a short phrase. I think this is noun adjective, or, just basic things. Anything beyond that was just bonus. Anything to add there, David? You looked like you were about to say something.
I'm just thinking about what's to come.
Okay. And so the data itself, again, this is either a reminder or a very brief introduction for you. It was split into 4 categories, and those were character names. And these included David's absolute favorite character names. They're actually like kind of a mix of English, Irish, and borrowed names. So we have Aisling Kennedy, Yvonne Hughes, Clodagh Kelly. I'm not sure how that's actually said.
I don't know either.
In Irish English. Clodagh. Lily Headley Smith or Smythe. And then Bicycle Billy, which I thought was hilarious. There were some place and brand names that I put in as the second category, and these included Dublin, Colleen, which actually in the book was a magazine title, Tricks, and Mercedes. And then I pulled just some random short phrases, so just 2-word phrases, ominous silence, surefire success, soap opera, and sweet 16. A lot of S's in there. And then the full clauses that we had to work with were rancor and regret generated insomnia. I'm like actually having a hard time pronouncing this like English because in my head, like I've been working so long with like how I was doing it.
Ditto. I'll never look at these words the same way again.
And extreme familiarity and empty distance hung together. You're welcome, David.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I have no idea why half of these got italicized.
Is it because of what they did?
No, like okay, anyway, sorry.
So there were 2 teams of patrons. There was Team Italic and Team Regular.
Team Regular. I have no idea what is going on with this slide. So if you're not seeing this, you're probably wondering what the heck's going on. But I have the list of the 6 patrons who submitted work along with, you'll get to see what David and I did. And I'm going to give a very brief overview of some of the highlights of what Bubba, Jake, Danielle, Patrick, Arias, and Jason submitted. And yeah, the first text box somehow got italicized and the second did not. So Bubba, Jake, and Danielle, your team italics. And Patrick, Arias, and Jason, your team regular.
Maybe Team Classic.
Classic. That does sound better than just regular. You're non-italic. I don't know. But it is still bold. So Team Bold could be, even though the other one is technically bold and italic.
Oh, so they're bitalic.
So anyway, Boltalic. But yeah, so those, I will talk about some of their work as we go. But first I'm going to start with what I did with the data sample. All right, David's very excited. So in terms of sounds, I included here like a consonant IPA chart just to sort of pull it all together.
Yeah, that's
the consonants that were like just used that were, Romanized and they matched IPA symbols, I basically mapped it out pretty straightforwardly. So, like the end of soap, you get a P, and I said, hey, that's pronounced like a P, and bicycle starts with a B, and that's pronounced like a B. And so from just sort of a straight up mapping, I got a series of stops, P, B, T, D, K, G, very classic series. I decided that within the data, there were quite a few C's, and these were written on their own and appeared in the same positions where K's did. And so it made sense that it needed to make a different sound than a K did. And so I decided to assign it the affricate, the alveolar affricate. And so like RANCOR in the data became Rantzor for me.
This is why I went, huh. Anyway.
And there are other options. This is just what I did. Some of the straight matches, F, V, S, and then H were all used in the data. So I assigned all those the IPA values. Along with those, there were some, oh my gosh, I've just lost the word. I almost said diacritics, but it's the digraph. There we go. Yeah. Digraphs TH, I assigned that as the theta. There was an SH, which I assigned to the esh. And there's a GH, which I assigned as the voiced velar fricative. There was also an X in the data, like at the end of our word tricks, and I decided that was the voiceless velar fricative. Huh, just like an IPA. I just put it right there. There was a W, an R, and an L in the data. I decided my R was actually more of a flap than a trill, but I just have it on my chart like an R. You know, it depends on how trilly you're feeling in the moment when you say it. There was an M and an N, and then the NG sequence I said was an angma, so like at the end of hung. For vowels, 5-vowel system with the addition of a Y, because there were quite a few Y's in the data, and really they appeared in positions where they had to be a vowel. And so I did that rounded front E vowel as that, and then there were, you know, I, U, E, O, and A. Those were in the data, and I said, yep, they just map out like normal. And so, yeah.
Yep.
All right, so he's on board with that. I did add in the proto system, because I made some sound changes to try to make some sense out of what I was seeing. So I actually added a proto schwa into my sound changes just so that way I could kill it to make sense out of some of the weird consonant clusters.
It's very handy, isn't it?
It sure is. And so I did have a proto schwa that I added there. I decided that this language was going to have stress on the initial syllable, call it the Finnish influence. I don't know. It just sounded fun, so I went with it. And I had that the proto-syllables were all CVC structures, but then the modern syllables got much more complex with the deletion of that schwa, left some consonant clusters, so it ended up being CC, and then instead of just V, it could be a long vowel or a diphthong. So I interpreted pretty much all of the double vowel sequences as diphthongs. So there's a ton of diphthongs like ya, wa, ea, all sorts of diphthongs in the data. And then CC for the coda. So a consonant cluster can appear in the coda. And so those are the modern syllables that you see in the data. And then once I got to the grammar side, I decided to make this language head initial, specifically with a VSO word order. And I noticed that in our clauses, well, actually in all of our samples, we just had a lot of big words. And so that to me just shouted, there's lots of compounds, inflectional affixes, and derivational affixes at work, which means that there are agglutinative tendencies. It could have also been fusional, but like I decided to go agglutinative to just, you know, pull out what I could see more easily. In terms of deciding on the head initial thing, really what I was working with was the placement of the ands in the clauses, because we have rancor and regret and rancor.
I think it's rancor.
Ranzor and regret is, of course, how I say it.
No, it'd be regret.
Yes, I can do that. Anyway, where the ands were positioned, it made it difficult for me to do what I really wanted to do, because I really originally wanted to do a head final word structure where I could make those post positions. So I was trying to make and a kind of function word. And I was like, ooh, post position. I was trying to make it anything but a conjunction, just because it is a conjunction in English. So anyway, so I tried my darndest to make it a head final structure, and it was not happening for me. So I went head initial. From there, what I really was looking at was, okay, I've got a couple of patterns. One is that there's this NC sequence and like rancor, but also in distance. Spelling wise, obviously in English, they're pronounced differently. There's an NC sequence. And it also shows up in the phrase where you have the word silence. And so NC and then NCE showed up. And I was like, I want to do something with that and make it mean something. And then also familiarity and empty are kind of back to back, or very close to back in the second clause. And so I was like, the TY is doing something there. And so I wanted to do something with that, make that have meaning. All right, so I ended up breaking it down where, well, verb initial, so ranzor is now my verb, And then I, again, inspired by Finnish, I think, I was like, hey, that adverb can go right after the verb, and it can have a meaning like already. And it can be really tiny, it can be short, among all these other very lengthy words. And so, regret, regret, because it's initial stress, is the subject noun. Generated is I made this a whole phrase put together. It's actually a preposition glommed onto the noun that it's working with. And then insomnia is an object. All right. And then in the second clause, I set it up again very similarly, where extreme or extreme is the verb. I have that and as an adverb all over again, and this time I did familiarity as familiari. I can't get that many syllables out with an initial stress.
Familiarity.
I am so glad that you can pronounce my language better than me. David has many amazing qualities, and his ability to pronounce things is one of them, and I love it. But yeah, that's another glommed on prepositional phrase situation. And then empty is an object. The subject is not here because it's on a suffix on the verb. and then together is my other object. So I had a ditransitive verb situation here. I added meaning just because it made it more fun for me. And so here, the first clause I have broken down into a sentence structure and the meaning of ransor ant regret generated insomnia is a group of children from the village are already cooking some marshmallows. And that's what that sentence means. One of my favorite things from this is that I made insomnia means marshmallow. And it's actually ins means pillow. Is a diminutive, so it's a little pillow. Is a marshmallow. Ni is the accusative suffix, and then a is an indefinite marker that actually comes from, just something that means like handful or group, or some rather. And so that just means like, an indefinite amount of some little pillows. No, those are the marshmallows. And so that was just how that sentence broke down. The NC sequence that I had pointed out earlier, I decided that was an aspect marker on verbs, and it's an imperfective aspect marker. And so ranzor means they are cooking, or they cooking. And then you have to figure out the tense of the situation based on context. And so, yeah. Any questions? Anything else I should point out, you think?
No, I think it's wonderful so far.
All right. And then the next sentence, this one, I gave the meaning, we had already handed that paper of speaking notes to the aide before the speech. This is quite complex. So here, the NC from distance, if you recall, I had that one highlighted. I have the NC again being the imperfective, but then I had a little suffix, you pronounce it A, but spell it with an E. And that's like a participial suffix that you attach to a verb form to turn it into a modifier. And so it's like if it has NCE, it's a modifier. If it's just got the NC, then it's, just part of a verb, and then you're looking for its agreement markers or whatever after it. So one thing I did here, empty means like accusative. It's the accusative version of the noun scroll, but imp as a root in its original form actually meant a tree stump, particularly a hollowed out tree stump. And then it started getting used to be referred to scrolls because of the shape, where you like have that rolled shape with like a hollowed out middle. And so it's just like, oh, it's like a stump. And so they started calling scrolls that. And then, now in modern senses, you wouldn't have scrolls. And so it's like a paper or a set of paper or whatever. And so then I assigned hung, by the way, as a distal demonstrative. because it was one of the short words I wanted to be a function word. The TYs that I had highlighted earlier became an accusative marker, and so familiarity and empty in this language are both in the accusative. It would actually be familiarity. Oh God, I can't do the flap there. Anyway, that is before the speech, where fami is before, liari is speech. And fun little side note, I built it into the lexicon that fami is actually the word for your back. And then before is actually behind you instead of in front of you.
Yeah.
If you recall, I had insomnia on the last slide being accusative as well.
I did. It was a ni
It was ni and not tu. Well, that's because it undergoes some sound shifts. And when the ty, the tu, attaches to a root that ends in a nasal, it becomes nu. And then also the u vowel in general has a sound change where anytime it comes before an unrounded vowel, e, a, or a, it turns into an e. And so you don't get ya, you get ya.
It's unrounding.
Yeah. So it unrounds before an unrounded vowel.
Wow. Wait. Yeah. Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. Boy, that's really something. It's actually also very nice, I think. If you were to think about, I mean, let's say that the T to N sound change, that's a thing. But imagine if the vowel sound change didn't happen. You'd be left with insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's possible, certainly. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a little bit nicer to, have the same rounding in the same nucleus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And certainly you couldn't round ah. That would just be absurd. Right. You'd end up with the worst vowel
ever,
as has been voted.
On Conlanging conflict.
Yeah, that's right.
Indeed. And so that's how that came about. I also assigned meanings to the little phrases. So ominous silence became sewing machine. Surefire success, colorful apron. Soap opera is now a wooden statue. And Sweet 16 is a young garden. In other words, like a fresh garden, like it's just starting to bloom. I didn't know what other adjective in English to use there. But anyway, there were a lot of compounds in here because these are big words. And so, for instance, ominous is machine, but it literally breaks down to mill hammer, where mill is the head word. So it's a hammer mill because it's a small machine and a mill is the larger machine. And then that silence or silence. See, I got to practice that initial. You have that NCE sequence that I had talked about, where the NC is the imperfective, but then the E is the A rather is the participle modifier thingy. In Surefire, that breaks down into suref, means smock or a loose dress. Ire is waist, so it's a waist smock. And then success has suits, means color, and ses means jumble, with a long S at the end of that. And that's the only geminate coda consonant that is allowed as far as I know from the data. And I have it that it's protoform. It has a schwa in between the two S's. And we're left with this. By the way, you may have noticed on my IPA chart, there's no Z. I didn't add a Z. And that's because all the Z's in this language did the same as, was it Sarkishe where that happened? Where all of the Z's went to TS?
Yeah.
And that's what happened in this language. And it got spelled as a C. Soap means statue. There's a reason for that. I forget what that reason was, why it means statue. Opera breaks down into ope, meaning tree, and ra is a derivational suffix meaning like, so tree-like. And then swait is sway, plant, and then the ate suffix is the collective. And then sichten is bloom. So it's like the swait is the garden, and then sichten is like a quality of blooming, where the ein suffix is quality or use of.
That's really something. We see that collective suffix again, first time with regret.
Yes, and there was a sound change I introduced for that one too, where the R ends up getting deleted in most situations, unless it follows. I think I specifically narrowed it down to a stop because that was the only time that ET had an R with it. And so yes, and that was for a group of children. This and because as a derivational suffix, a collective can be interpreted differently. And so with regret, it was just a group of children was the translation, whereas suet is collective plant, and that specifically refers to a garden. So it's not just a group of plants. For the names, I decided that Dublin was a brand name, and it's a type of espresso.
Nice.
And there's a reason for that. You'll see in a moment. Colleen or Zolén is hall, like a meeting place. Trich is a stable, and Mercedes is a theater. And one thing I did here was that Lin is from Dublin, is a byproduct derivation, and it comes from the noun ling, meaning juice, which shows up in Ashling. And so I made that connection there. And so to break it down, dub means press, lean is a byproduct. So it's a byproduct of pressing, and that's how you make espresso, is you press the beans. And so Dublin is espresso. Zolén has that ein suffix like 16, so 16, where you have that en, that quality or use. And so it is a gathering area, something associated with gathering, and that is a hall or a meeting place. Trich is actually a compound where the initial word was house, and it was a T schwa, so ta, and then rich is horse, so it's a horse house. And then Mercedes, mer is to dance. Se is that participle that we've seen before. The N drops out because the R makes it.
Right.
And then the des is a locative derivation. So it's a place of dancing. It's Mercedes. And of course, mer, I was thinking of meridian.
Oh.
And then I didn't assign meanings to the names outside of Ashling. Everything else I left it there, but I did decide that the ly, the lu, would be an agentive suffix. So like kellu would be like, kel would be a verb, and it would be, I don't know, walker or something, I don't know. And so the lu suffix I decided would be agentive. And ashling means berry juice, I decided.
Oh, that's a lovely name.
So I did make that one. Okay, so that was my work. You following along?
Actually, would that be juiceberry?
Yes, it would be. It's a juiceberry.
Right on.
Yeah. I should have, well, and I can't change it here because we're not in the actual presentation. But you're absolutely right. It is juiceberry because berry is the head noun.
Yeah.
Woo! Anywho. Thank you for catching that. Look at David.
I pay attention sometimes.
All right, so now I'm going to I kind of have to fly through. I cannot tell you how much incredible work was submitted by the 6 patrons who submitted. And I'm talking that there are submissions that are upwards of 20 pages and just absolutely incredible work. I could spend over an hour talking about, just like one. And I am instead trying to fly through some highlights from all 6 in like the next 15 minutes. And so for any patron who wants to like expand on this and like share what you did, all of them have given me their blessing to share their documents with you on the patron post that I put with the podcast. And so you can look at the documents, but any of you who did this little experiment, if you just want to talk more about it, like I would love to hear you talk through some of it. I just want to say thank you so much. The work was incredible. And I'm so sorry I can't hit more than what I'm about to hit on these next slides. So I kind of broke it down where it's like, if you recall, I gave you the sound charts that I used. And effectively, I made that sort of the status quo. So if you did the same thing I did, I'm not going to point it out. I want to point out what you did differently from me. And so to that end. We're going to start with Bubba in his sound charts.
Hashtag Team Italic.
Team Italic, that's right. But here, not Italic, just regular. Or classic, that's right. Bubba made a really interesting decision with the stops. And so if you recall in the data, we had the P, B, T, D, K, G, all of them were present in the data. Bubba decided that the voiced stops, when they're written romanized, so like the B, the D, and the G, would actually be pronounced as a voiceless stop, unaspirated. Whereas when it's written as a voiceless, a P, T, or a K, it's an aspirated voiceless stop. And I thought that was kind of brilliant. Like it didn't even occur to me to think about the B as anything but a B. And I'm going to be real honest. When I first opened Bubba's document, I was like, why are there all these P's all over the place? Like, what's happening? And then I really looked at what was going on, and very consistently this pattern emerged. And I was like, well, that just is brilliant.
I believe his name is pronounced Papa.
Go for it. I encourage you to pronounce Bubba's name.
Papa.
Like that. Another difference in terms of, so a lot of the consonants lined up same as mine, like an F was an F, a V was a V. All good. But one of the other differences that Bubba had was that the X, instead of being that velar ch, he assigned it to the esh. So so instead of trich, like I had it, his was trich, except his R was the upside down, backwards upside down one.
Trish?
The R.
Capital, you mean?
Capital upside down, backwards R.
That wouldn't make sense. That should have devoiced. But that's Trish.
I wasn't even going to try it. So thank you, David. I do remember that. I didn't put that on this sound chart because I was just trying to highlight a few key things here. But yeah, that's going to be loud. Jake did, they did some differences with the X and the C.
Okay.
And so instead of having...
all this.
What's that?
I can explain all this.
Well, then go for it, since I took out the glottal column to put in a pharyngeal column on this slide because they did this differently, but go for it.
I was just going to say I before a vowel is a ya, so insomnia. But
I love that I'm talking about a completely different column, and you take over to say you get what's going on. And
I was talking about this. So, well, the X is a h, which is a voiceless pharyngeal fricative. And then the C is a pharyngeal approximant. In Arabic transcription, so not in the Arabic writing system, but in Arabic transcription, the pharyngeal approximant is written with a superscript C. A little bit like sometimes it's done with, names like McAdam. Sometimes that is how, like, if you're looking at an Arabic textbook before they switch over completely to the Arabic writing system, the pharyngeal approximates will be written with these little C's. And so Jake has taken a cue here. And
or do you mean a who?
Who? Oh my. And so the C's are all ein. And so that do you happen to remember what they assigned for R?
Oh, that one may have actually been a uvular. Because I kind of left the R's out of it because everyone assigned the R to something R-ish.
Okay.
But I'm trying to remember if theirs was uvular or alveolar. And off the top of my head, I can't remember.
Let's just go ahead and call it alveolar. And so that would be ran'ur.
Ew. God, I'm so happy you're here because I was just going to be like, hey, everyone, it's that sound that's represented by the backwards glottal stop. And then David's absolutely right that the I in insomnia, but only the one that came before the A, is pronounced like the ya. And so I's become yas. They become glides. before a vowel. So they did have, that rule written in there.
And you know why I think Jake did this?
Why?
Because I can't remember now how it originally came up, but on Discord, that's right. There was a misspelling for the national anthem of one of the countries in the Copa America.
Yeah.
And it was the himno Itmeño. That was it, Itmeño. But they had written it Itemño.
Right.
With an M followed by an Enya. And I was like, that's just the worst sequence in the world. I can't believe they screwed it up that bad. Anyway, so then everybody started defending it, and of course reminding me of Slavic, where, for example, mnie is how you say, it's one of the declensions for me. And so now, in this word, by making it a ya, we have the sequence mnya for insomnia.
And that is exactly why Jake did it. Just to be like, look, David.
I'm pretty sure. I
love it. Good job, Jake. Danielle treated the C as a ch instead of a ts. So very similar in that, it's still an affricate, but now it's a palatal affricate. Danielle also did the ya and I, alternation. And so it's like, again, before a vowel.
Insomnia.
But also incorporated a WU alteration where it's pronounced like a W before a vowel, but an U in other places.
Sweet.
Exactly. And what's cool is that Danielle actually even wrote up a little extra section on how this was dialectal variation, where the, okay, I'm going to get it right. The pronunciations where the vowel is maintained, where it's like insomnia instead of ya, and suet instead of swait, where that vowel is maintained is like aristocratic speech, because that's evidence of older language use. And then, the young kids, the modern people, have just shifted those to glides. And so they're just, everyday speech. They become the W and the ya.
This is how you know that I come from aristocratic stock, because I eat caramel. What do you eat, peasant?
Well, it depends, because it's sometimes caramel and sometimes caramel. Depends on how I eat it. Anyway... Another choice that Danielle made that was a little off the beaten path, and not actually, these are not off the beaten path. This one is, I think.
Yeah.
Danielle made every single G in Ingma. And I'm going to tell you, Danielle, when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, I can't. My tongue is not working. Okay, and so to say regret, regret. And I really have to think about it. And I was like, I was thinking, God, patrons are just like wanting to hear me pronounce things really horribly. But no, Danielle, it was a super interesting decision to, treat the G's as an Ingma. And it led to some very, very interesting word structures in terms of just trying to read them out loud and say them. Patrick... Also, so what you'll see from here on out, there's a whole lot of ch's for the C's. So a lot of people were on board with treating C's as a ch. But then Patrick was also like, you know what? We're also going to do this velar affricate that Jessie one time called a velar affricate, and David was like, really? But anyway, x. And so trix is with the x.
Terrible. I love it, Patrick.
Arias also did the ch for the C, and did a super, super interesting GW alternation, where, and I had to write the rule down so I wouldn't forget it, a G becomes a W when it appears between a consonant and a vowel. And Arias actually went through and showed that a G never occurs in this situation, and the only place a W occurs is in this situation. Like, how cool is that?
You know what that means? That means when you instead of saying I gotta skate, you say I gotta sweat.
You say skate with a K or a G?
No, but there's no possible word like that in English, so skate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, gosh, David.
Well, and there was also, for those who follow either by Tumblr or back when I was on Twitter, there was a child spelling thread. And there was this guy was showing the spellings he did as a child, and he interpreted stops following S as voiced.
Because they weren't aspirated.
Because they weren't aspirated, just like Bubba's. Papa.
Fascinating. Jason also had a ch for a C, but did an interesting, and I couldn't really put it on the chart anywhere, so I just put a rule below it to say where a C was followed by an L in the romanization, so ch followed by L,
Oh, no.
it became pronounced as a T, and then that L, the L with the fancy curly Q.
It's the Klingon sound change, so that it's not Klingon, it's Klingon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that sound change was incorporated, which I thought was really cool. Jason also did the WU and JI.
You're all gunning for me.
Alterations. So lots of insomnia. Jake did a central vowel for the Y. And I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
It's very likely. It seems like, yeah. All right.
And so instead of having that Y sound for a Y, Jake assigned it the central Y. Okay. I really...
That's how that's Romanized. At least one Romanization strategy for Cyrillic is to barred I's rendered as Y.
Jake was pulling out all the good, you're not going to think of this punches. Mm-hmm. And they did it spectacularly. In terms of stress, there were some different stress systems assigned by different people. There were systems where it was initial, like mine. So, for instance, Kennedy and Mercedes were both initial stress. I happened to pick out words with 3 syllables, so antepenultimate lines perfectly initial, with initial for these. However, in a word like familiarity, it would make a difference. And so there was, I want to say it was Jason who assigned antepenultimate. I think I may have that wrong though. I know Danielle was one person who did weighted stress. And so it was final stress if the final syllable was closed. Or heavy, or it's penultimate.
Got it.
And so like Kennedy, but Mercedes. And so that, and then Jake had done no stress at the lexical level. So stress would have only been assigned, or tone. They weren't clear on that. They said no stress or tone at the lexical level. I'm not entirely sure if they intended that at the grammatical level there would be stress and or tone. I'm not sure which.
It's just like the Cocteau twins. It's assigned after you put all the words together.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
Grammar-wise, a lot of head initial decisions. So Jake, Patrick, Arias, Jason all went head initial. But in the head initial, Patrick said VSO was the basic word order. Arias went VOS for basic word order. And Jason went SVO. So we had a lot of variation there. In the head final, both Bubba and Danielle chose head final, and SOV was that chosen order. So we got a good little bit of variety here. All right, so I am giving out some awards here.
Okay.
I thought Jake had some thoughtful naming strategies. They kind of really went through carefully with the names and saw those, what was romanized as DY, and then there were also a lot of LYs. And Jake actually wrote a rule for like when it would appear as a D and when it would appear as an L, but it's like the same suffix. And it means something like son, and it primarily appears in surnames. But then they also noted that Lily, which is spelled Lily, has it, but like it's basically a shortening because by the sound changes there should technically be 2 L's. And then Jake made the argument that sometimes when you take a surname and start using it as a first name, it gets reduced. And I was like, that's really cool. You're right. Yeah. And so essentially that's going to be like, that was originally an LLY situation that turned into a more reduced version. And then they also found that there were several names with sort of an NE component. And so they had said this was an element without meaning for now, commonly found in surnames, but also able to occur in first names like Ivan, Ivane, Ivane.
Ivane.
There we go. And so I thought those were some really cool strategies that Jake came up with. Danielle made some really cool connections among the different words and made kind of historical origins to connect them. And I was fascinated by that work. And so, for instance, in words like surefire in English, you get that SU, su. And remember that Danielle also has the WU alternation. I keep saying the wrong word. Anyway, has that alternation in the language. And so that would also be the same sort of prefix then found in sweet, because the U becomes a W. And Danielle said that this originally comes from sul, meaning to dream, and it's a derivational prefix that you use with adverbs and adjectives. And then Danielle had also picked out the lin suffix, like from Dublin, and had said that it means point or spot in place names. So like it's a way of just indicating an area. But that you could augment it, and its augmentative form becomes lane, like the end of Colleen, and it means peak, and it's used for mountain names. And so it's like, that's super cool. And then further connected that lin suffix to the ling of Ashling, and gave Ashling the definition justice, or the point of balance is actually what it breaks down to.
That's just incredible.
And then, of course, this also accounts for the Leen of Colleen. And so just all the connections, it was all interconnected. And so I was just kind of blown away by that.
By the way, that right there, that could be a band and an album, like an 80s metal band. The 80s metal band Justice with their album Point of Balance. Incredible.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Patrick and Ardia share this award for some mind-bending semantics that they did on their work, because both treated the English meanings as the intended translations and then worked to map those meanings onto the forms in different ways.
An incredibly difficult task.
Like, holy cow. So I'm just going to walk through an example where Ardiaz has, so this is that rancor and regret generated insomnia sentence. So rancor is now the verb, meaning something like to create, and is a past tense marker. And then regret actually means insomnia, but breaks down into a compound meaning lack sleep. Generated is a noun meaning rancor, and insomnia is a noun meaning regret. And so Arias had broken down, I didn't put all the breakdowns, but had done the work to go through and map different things. And it was, same sentence. Patrick actually did the same semantic mapping, but differently.
Wow.
Where R is a negative prefix, and so rancor has the R, so it's basically, it breaks down into not allow, so they don't allow. And then and is also a past tense marker in Patrick's breakdown. Regret has that negative marker. Egret is the accusative nominalized version of the verb, to be awake. And so it's not awake, so sleep, and then sleep. And so basically the meaning here, by the way, breaks down into rancor and regret don't allow you to sleep, is when you break it down this way, right? But there was so much detail in Patrick's analysis. Generated breaks down into roughly a complex compound meaning bile of the heart. And it's got, the nominative case. And insomnia breaks down into something meaning like sorrow of regret.
My.
It was mind blowing. And like, I wish I could present all of the little pieces because Patrick, oh my God, the work you did. Wow. Okay. Funniest write up goes to Bubba, and I'm going to read a couple of direct quotes. FrameLang nouns do not inflect for anything and only decline invitations to group events. It's like, this is great. And then the next one was great because this is basically in the grammar section where it's like, hey, give more details about grammar and how it works. FrameLang is experiencing a higher number of calls than expected. FrameLang cares about all other parts of grammar, and y'all's questions are very important to us. Please stay on the line and enjoy our music as you are number 47. And then music notes with a saxophone.
Yeah, that's the best type of music.
It just like, I laughed so hard, Bubba, when I read your little side notes and everything that you included. And so thank you for that. And then the final little award, deep meanings. Jason, holy cow. Are you ready?
Mm-mm.
All right. So first of all, Jason named the language. Eschlent is this language. And assigned meanings like I did where it just kind of, made up things. And rancor and regret generated insomnia now became she will ignite the moon and the stars in the sky. Mm-hmm. I mean, gorgeous. Like me did a verb initial construct. And so rancor is the verb to ignite, but in the future. Regret broke down to wise one, which is the moon, and then shining one refers to the stars. The conjunction actually joins the two, the wise one and the shining one, is the ed suffix on generated, and that's the conjunction.
Much better. Yeah, that's really
and then nia is a locative marker for the sky. Insom is the sky. It was just, this is beautiful work.
That's really good.
The next sentence broke down to, so the extreme familiarity and empty distance hung together actually means she tried to hunt large animals to feed her child who always hungers. And so to hunt, familiari is the root there, but it's not like a basic root. And so I just have the asterisk there because I was like, no way can I type this all up as neatly as Jason explained it, where it's like historically it would have been a verb object compound. Meaning like to hunt like a specific animal that was common to the area. And so it became this verb object compound that then just became used as the verb itself, meaning to hunt in general.
Yeah.
And so that's why that one's just so long. Jason treated the ty suffix. So noticed again with familiarity and empty right there back to back, we got these two tys. What are we going to do with them? Jason went infinitive marker on both of them, and I thought that was really smart with the way everything came together. Yeah. And so really cool. And then made up some extra sentences with more of just like created vocabulary. And so also assigned Lily, the name, assigned that meaning mouse. Mm-hmm. And so I may be pronouncing these all wrong because Jason, now I don't remember how all your consonants mapped out, but Peme Lilu Generat Hong Ishme means the mouse watched the star that fell. Glame Grachton Pumet Ith Sunia Seti means the cat crept into the house to sleep. And I think your C's were chus. Chunkter Nehrut Kru means the rabbit eats grass habitually.
Oh.
And so you can see all these units, like the thur from the together, Lily from the name, generat from, generated. So you can see all these little pieces. Oh, the nia from insomnia. And so Jason, legit was like, hey, you want this to be a language? I'm going to just keep going with it. It was amazing.
Fantastic.
And so now we've hit David's contribution, and I'm going to stop talking while David ends us on a slam bam finish.
All right, then. You ready?
No.
All right. I'm going to introduce you to the language Shelidi.
You named it too.
Shelidi.
Oh,
Källeri.
I hear what you're doing there.
Oh, yeah.
It is
Oh, yeah.
not a tse.
So, I didn't set it up as nicely as you did. I wish I would have. But I'll go ahead and give you the highlights, the things that are different. All of the approximants, the W, the L, and the R, have voiced and voiceless pairs. This will become relevant as you see that there is no sh in this language. However, there is a distinction between a h and a ch, and we will see how that ends up playing in.
I forgot to mention one thing.
Yeah.
Do you mind me going backwards a tiny bit? Not in the presentation.
Sure.
But I do want to say that, because I think based on what I'm seeing here, you treated most digraphs as like the GH as a unit and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I remember Jake was the only person that I remember off the top of my head who treated like TH as a coda in onset and an SH as a coda in an onset. And so not like ishe, not ishe or whatever, it'd be ishe. Anyway, I found that very interesting. But
Well,
I feel like what you maybe with the r being here, I feel like you treated that as a digraph.
the GH, yes, but the SH,
No.
Or yes, but not
But
not the way that you think it would be usually. Otherwise, things work mostly as expected. Right, here we go. And so, as we can see, I will say about the L and the R, the voiceless versions are spelled HL and HR sometimes. Sometimes they are not.
Okay.
All right. Vowels, it's the same set as Jessie had, but with long and short variants.
I didn't include those on my chart, by the way, just because they weren't different qualities. But yeah, mine also had long vowels. Yeah.
And there they are. Nice doubled set for all of them. So all the vowels, you double them in writing. The Källeri language delights in vowel combinations. Mm-hmm. So we have ominos, sop, media, and härlig, for example. No meaninsia. Källeri allows some initial consonant clusters. And so you see here smithe, shlodar, and trich. And you'll notice that the L and the R are voiceless in these. But, you don't need to write it out because it's pretty obvious.
Would all L's and R's after voiceless consonants, like in the same consonant cluster, be devoiced?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. Main stress falls on the first heavy syllable from the right, otherwise the penultimate syllable.
So, like Danielle's.
Like Danielle's a bit, except that it would be Kennedy.
Because you're looking for any...
a heavy
Yeah,
syllable.
you're looking for any heavy. Okay.
Yes. Falling diphthongs do not count as heavy.
Okay.
And so this is why it's asling.
Oh my God, you didn't do SH.
Nope.
You did HL.
HL.
Oh my gosh.
That's right. And so we have asling, Yvonne, Kennedy, Serefire, Milia, Miliaritu.
Okay, because the doesn't count.
That's right.
As heavy.
That's right. Does not count as heavy. Källeri is a lightly inflectional head initial language.
Oh.
VSO, nouns followed by modifiers, whether they're adjectives, possessors, or relative clauses. Mm-hmm. Prepositions and determinatives coming first.
Okay.
Nouns inflect only for number. Word order determines agent and patient. Plurality is associated with a suffix. Ominos is castle. Ominoset is castles. Empty, chain. Emptied, chains.
Nice.
All right. The T of the plural suffix voice is in front of a vowel or approximant.
Okay.
So, for example, soapet distanchet is steel-like opossums. But beautiful opossums, soapet operat.
Nice.
And so the T voice is there. So,
At the end of so aped.
yeah, so aped operat. Operat. But yes, distanciet is steel-like.
Love it.
Yeah. Regular possession is associated with a preposition. Sweet, otter, together, eternity. Thus, Sweet hung together is the otter of eternity.
And what an otter it is. That is fantastic.
All right. Pronominal possession, however, is associated with a prefix. So sweet is otter, asweet is my otter, fasweet is our otter, and sesweet is your otter. And here's and there's the prefix, as you can see. Here is a full table breakdown. And so going with the singular, we have a, s, and l. The a has an epenthetic r if needed. S and l have an epenthetic e. For plurality, it's f, k, and I. F has an epenthetic a, k has an epenthetic I, and I has an epenthetic nasal that just assimilates in place to whatever follows it. All right?
Nice.
All right. Adjectives agree with their nouns in number. So, sweet generat is the jovial otter. Sweetet generatet, jovial otters. Sweet opera, beautiful otter. And sweeted operat, beautiful otters.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, and again, we see the, there's an epenthetic E when needed, and of course the T voices if necessary. All right, definiteness. Nobody did this. I was very surprised. I have to say, I think the pronoun was probably the best and most obvious choice, and I don't know why I didn't think of it. And that was Jason.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, yours with already, that was great too. So there's a definite article on/und. This means the. And so dista is steel. Andista is the steel. Empty is a chain. And andempty is the chain. And so basically, I guess I didn't say it right there. Maybe I'll say it later. But essentially, the D appears before vowels and before approximants.
Gotcha.
All right. Verbs. Källedi verbs agree with their subjects. And so aska is I tell, because the root ask means to tell.
As it should.
Yeah. Aska, I tell. Askis, you tell. Aske. She, he, or it tells. Here's the full chart. So we have, basically, there's an epenthetic R if it's a vowel. There's an epenthetic I if it's a consonant. And so first and third person singular are a and e, or ra and re. Second person is the same for singular and plural, and that is is, or just s. And then first and third plural are the same. They're r, or ir. All right? So källedi distinguishes perfective from imperfective aspect. Aska, I tell. Chaska, I told. Trema, I break. Echtrema, I broke. And so, I thought I was going to spell that out. But anyway, the suffix basically is ch before a vowel. And then it's ech before a consonant. It's essentially the same thing, and it just takes an epenthetic vowel in the front. And of course, ch, when pronounced at the end of a syllable, is cha. So, yeah, echtrema.
And it's a prefix, yeah.
It's a prefix.
You said suffix, so I was
did.
like, I swear.
Very sorry. It's
My
a
eyes
prefix.
aren't seeing, but anyway, okay, prefix, yes.
Yes, so the aspect is a prefix, the agreement is a suffix, which of course makes sense if you're pulling adverbs out in front, and then it's VSO.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so participles, the suffix I or ri, so it's I or ri, turns any verb into a generic participle. So treme is, he, she, or it breaks. Tremi is breaking or broken. Miliare, miliare is loves, and miliari is loving or loved.
Nice.
There's also nominalization. So this is a T or a D, and then an U or an U nominalizes participles. U becomes U after a front vowel. So tremi is breaking or broken, but it has to apply to a participle, right? Tremitu is breaking. Miliari, loving or loved, and miliaritu is love.
Nice.
All right. And compounds, the second word modifies the first. So sure is tongue, fire is frog, and so sure fire is somebody who is tone deaf.
Who is frog-tongued?
That's right.
Oh my gosh. What are you saying about me?
Names. Oh yeah, I had this written down and I just reproduced it.
You read it.
Kjelledy names come from the heart. They cannot be tamed by any rule, no matter how clever.
Love it.
Yeah. That was all. That was all I was done there. So, and of course there were sound changes, which I was too lazy to deal with.
Listen, I just kind of barely mentioned mine, and I was like,
I wrote them up.
Oh no, I wrote mine up too.
Oh,
but
nicely
I
done.
didn't bring them into the presentation because I was like, I've said enough.
Yeah. Anyway, and so meaning then. So we have this sentence, which is echtre me familiaritu and empty distantie juntugeher.
Oh God, that's gorgeous.
All right. Echtre me has broken. Familiaritu, our love, and the empty chain, distantie, the steely chain, hung of together. In other words, our love has broken the steely chain of eternity.
Oh, and if you gotta watch these things. In the video, David has our faces in a heart. That is the sweetest, cutest thing ever. Oh my gosh.
Incidentally, you remember where that picture came from?
We're staring at each other.
Yeah, we are. Somebody had to take that picture, didn't they?
Was that our wedding?
Not quite.
That was our reception.
It was our reception.
And it was outside.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, Andlin, which is, of course, the end.
Oh, but what did you do with the Ranzor and Regret sentence?
So I've got this all written up, of course. Let's see.
I just want to know the meaning, because I'm super curious to know what you did with that one.
Yeah.
That was the best way to end, and now I'm ruining the incredible way to end this by asking another question.
Yeah. Here.
We'll be sharing documents, so you'll get to see. But
Oh, and also, of course, I forgot. Silenche is mushroom-like.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And kenne, by the way, is magnolia. That was why distantie is steel-like, because it's steel magnolias.
Nice. Oh, that's good.
Okay, here we go. Oh yes, here we go. Ranchor and regret generated insomnia. And that is the jovial mice are serenading their family.
Oh, my little barred mice. Oh, I have a soft spot for them. Okay, so that was marvelous.
And miraculously, no word success was found. Like it just didn't exist. It just wasn't there.
Entry missing.
Yeah, it's just gone.
404.
Yeah.
Page gone.
Yeah. If there was a word like it, it probably didn't have two S's at the end. That might have been a typo.
That's amazing. And so I hope you all enjoyed hearing. I know it can be kind of scattered as we're trying to give results that maybe are best just shown on a screen. But it's really cool to see all the different ways that you could break down the same data and come up with very probable ways that the patterns emerged. All of the analyses focused on patterns that were there and patterns that, you can see that other people had recognized as well, but then they just treated them, differently. And I find that just absolutely so incredible. And so thank you to all who participated. I know when the challenge was first set, there was a disturbance on Discord. There was some discord in Discord about how awful it was. And I think my name may have been cursed more than once. And yet when people started it, they were like, oh, okay, I could get into this. And I know some of the people who were a little bit like, what? Gave me some really incredible work. So
they were just South Enders, I think.
But yeah, so I'm glad you all stuck with it. I hope you enjoyed, and we look forward to speaking with you next time. I know I already have a topic picked out. I don't remember off the top of my head which one is going next, but if you recall, this is actually a second episode of a 5-part miniseries. And so I'll remember what I'm talking about before next month, but tune in again. Something to do with pre-existing material and conlanging work. It's somewhere in there. And so hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, week, and stay grammar.
Bye, everybody.